4C Divers! Welcome to Facebook Live. We're super excited to have you guys tuning in today. My name is Nicole. I'm your social media director, and I'm here to start off the event tonight. So it is Thursday. It is July 9th, 2020, and we're excited to bring a really great seminar tonight. So before we get started, couple of housekeeping things. Has anyone been paying attention to the ocean? It has been flat, calm, beautiful blue water, nice and warm, 84 degrees. So if you're not diving, let's get you diving. So give us a call. We'll get you booked on a boat, or you can join us on some of our meetups. We have boat dive meetups and we have beach dive meetups. So go on our website, www.4c.com, and you can go to the events page and you can get signed up. We also have lots of classes going on right now. If you have kids and you don't know what to do with them this summer, give us a call. We'll take them diving. Whether they're certified or not certified, we'll get them out there. So another thing we wanted to make sure you guys know that tonight, our Facebook Live event, we have an online registration. It's going to close at 7, so that's in about 30 minutes. And you want to make sure you go there and register for tonight's event. The reason why is after this presentation, we're going to put anybody's name who's in that registration into a random name picker, and we are going to give away a free service of either a Regulator or a BCD. That's right, guys. So you can get your gear service for free if you go ahead and get in there and get into our random name picker, and hopefully you're the winner. If you are here, give us a thumbs up. Let us know you're here. Give us a heart. Give us a smiley face. We want to know that you're tuning in. Let us know in the comments section. Do you live here in South Florida, or are you listening in from other parts of the state, or even other parts of the country or out of the country? So we want to know who's listening in. A couple of things, guys. While our guest presenter is talking, you're more than welcome to type in comments. Best thing to do is to keep the comments to the topics he's talking about, so that way we can keep on point and keep the presentation moving and flowing. So we'll try and answer anything that comes through. And we're really excited because guess what, guys? Lobster mini season is coming. And what usually happens is the service department here gets really busy because people don't dive for like a year or even longer, and they let their gear sit and kind of get salty and crusty, and then they bring it into the service department and they're like, hey, let's service our gear. Well, first, before you bring it in, maybe take a look at it with some of the tips and tricks that you're going to hear tonight, and then figure out if you need to have it serviced before mini season if you're deciding to partake. Or if you're not going to do a mini season and you still want to get out there and enjoy these great conditions right now, we want you guys to be enjoying your gear. So get it serviced. And if you want it before mini season, the cutoff date is July 20th. So all you guys out there who want to dive with your gear for mini season, July 20th is the cutoff date. All right. So we've got a lot of people saying hello. We're really excited. Hi, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. And I bet you guys didn't want to hear from me. You probably wanted to hear from the man, the legend, Mr. Billy Black. Hey, Billy!
Hey, everybody. How are we doing tonight?
And Billy's going to be talking about the proper gear maintenance to make sure that you are getting your gear serviced and getting it out there to go diving.
All right, everybody. What we're going to do tonight is we're going to go through kind of a general realm of all the gear that you're going to have. You know, we joke about what I'm doing is trying to keep it so I don't have to write you nasty notes when I service your gear. A lot of this is to make it so that whenever you guys go diving, you're not going to get a dive ruined by something that wasn't taken care of properly. The first part of this, we're going to address some of the basic gear, you know, mask and fins and wetsuits and so forth. After that, then we'll get into the BCs and regulators, which would be the crux of the seminar, because that's the one where I generally get most of my comments, and you know, most of the pictures that I end up sharing around are from that realm of the world. But it doesn't matter. With a bad mask, a bad fin, you ruin a dive, and that's what we don't want to do. We want it so when you go diving, you're set to go and have a great time. So first of all, we're going to start with masks. It's the most basic part of diving. Everybody has to have a mask. The first thing when you get a new mask is make sure that you've used some type of a cleaner, like a sea buff or something with a little abrasion to clean the lenses to help it stop from fogging. What you want to do is take a little bit, drop it in there, you scrub it around, rinse it out. You're probably gonna have to do it a few times. And the overall, you know, if you go dive and you start to get a little more fogging, when you get done with the dive, do it a few more times. It takes a while to break into a brand new mask. Sometimes frustrating, but as long as you clean it good and do it several times, you'll generally have a great dive. And so when you're done with the buff, then you go to a defog situation where you generally hit it with a couple bits of drops of defog, rub it around. There you don't rub it off, you just kind of dip it to get the excess off. And then you're ready to go diving. Now, the mask is the most, you want to ruin a dive, the mask will ruin a dive. If you sit there and don't treat it right and it starts leaking on you the whole dive, that little drip of water coming in your mask will just irritate you to death. At least it irritates me to death. So what you want to do is when you're done diving, make sure that you rinse your mask, clean it very well. Now, I know we're going to have a couple extra cleaning steps now since we're in the coronavirus area. And one of the things that you're going to use, and this applies to almost every piece of equipment that we have, we do it at the store level. You can do it at the house level too. We use the Steramine. There's several products out there that work. This is inexpensive and very effective product that works. And you basically just drop tablet in, use it, make sure that when you're done that you rinse it off, because if you go too heavy with Steramine and don't rinse it off, you can get a little film buildup on it. So you just want to make sure that you do a little rinse off when you're done. But you'll find out that through this whole presentation, my thing that you're going to hear several times is fresh water. Fresh water, and I can't say fresh water enough. Now, some people don't understand truly what fresh water is. Some people think the pool is fresh water. It really isn't. It is better water than ocean water, but it is not fresh water. That's not a rinse either. When you go in a pool, you need to rinse your gear after you go in a pool. Now, when you go to store your mask, that's next where most people kind of mess their mask up, and I'll tell you I do mine that way, and I should do it a lot better. And most masks will come with a mask box. If you can clean your mask, dry your mask, dry every piece of gear before you go to put it away, otherwise you will start to get mold and bacteria growing on it. So dry everything, put the mask back in the mask box. You can throw it in, you can throw everything on top of it. It's not going to hurt your mask. And you're going to have the best chance of having a good dive when you come back out of it. All right, now, when we go into fins, fins are the same thing. You just don't have to clean them, or you don't have to prep them. You know, they're ready to go, but when you're out, definitely rinse them off. You don't have to worry about the Steramine as much on your fins. But when you're done, you know, you have everything's a rubber-based or a silicone-based product. And down here in Florida with the heat and the salt and the sun, you're going to eventually wear on these things. So what you want to do is get all the salt off of them, get them dried, and get them stored in a nice, cool place. The less heat that you put on any of your dive gear is going to be to the better. From here, let's go into mouthpieces. And with mouthpieces, this is one big thing now that people are really keen on, is getting their own mouthpieces now if they do not have their own gear. So when they go to get rental gear, they have a mouthpiece. It's their own mouthpiece that they'll hook on and take off each time that they go and rent their gear. We don't have a problem, you know, taking it on and storing our mouthpiece and putting ours back on when you're done. Even though we clean our mouthpiece and we do everything with Steramine, we're diligent about it, you know, just for peace of mind. A lot of people are going and getting their own mouthpiece for this type of situation. Now, there's two main types of mouthpieces. This is a pretty standard mouthpiece here. It's actually a very good mouthpiece, silicone. It actually has little bite tabs on it. It's pretty much a generic, will fit almost all regulators. This one's clear. I got people who buy black mouthpieces so they don't see the bacteria that's growing underneath. That's kind of the wrong way to go about this. What you want to do is clean it so you don't get any bacteria growing underneath. This mouthpiece here is a moldable one where you'll take it, dip it in warm water, bite on it, get your own impression on it. It's more of a custom fit mouthpiece. Very comfortable, generally a little bit less jaw fatigue because the mouthpiece itself kind of holds in, getting into the little nubs of your teeth. Mouthpieces are one of the areas where you get a lot of bacteria. Down in this area right here where it locks onto the second stage, nobody ever rinses underneath here. And every time that I fix a regulator, there's always bacteria underneath there. And I've got a couple pictures that'll be coming up in the regulator section that will show you, that'll make you a little more aware of how much we need to worry about mouthpieces. All right, so next we're gonna jump into the wetsuit section, I believe. So with our wetsuits, most people around here, we're diving wetsuits pretty much year round. In the dead of summer, a lot of people might not dive a wetsuit, but when it comes to lobster season, they're diving it just for protection more than warmth. Now with wetsuits, we're gonna go with the old adage that there's those who pee in the wetsuits and those who lie about it. And so what you want to do is when you get your wetsuit out, you want to rinse it. Now, in the general pattern of rinsing your gear, that would be the last thing that you rinse. Okay, so we got how that step works. The wetsuit will be the last. But when you do it, there are a couple things that they have. We have odor eliminator and sink the stink. They're basically a cleaner for your wetsuit, and they work fantastic. Just put them in, do all the rinsing of all the gear that we're going to talk about going forth. And at the very end, you can dip a little bit of the odor eliminator in there, put it in, finish your wetsuit off, dry it. Everything must be dried. If you do not dry your stuff, you are going to have just bundles of mold and bacteria and smell. And I'm talking from your wetsuit to your regulator. If you do not dry your regulator, it's going to have the worst odor about it that will get in with all the bacteria from your mouth if you didn't rinse it off right. Now, another good product is a little zip stick. A lot of people, if they don't rinse their wetsuit real well, or if they don't dry it well, or if it just gets a little bit older, the zip stick is like a lubricant for your zipper. It makes it real easy to go up and down. It'll save you from yanking on it and popping up the, breaking off your little tab. And there we go. There's Vanna White. She got the zip stick in there. All right. Then next, everybody's wetsuit generally gets a tear in it. This is a very good product. AquaSeal will do the job. AquaSeal will do the job. Doesn't matter what the tear is. If it's on a seam, if it's in the mid section, even if it's a larger cut and you can get a small piece of material to go over it, AquaSeal is great. What real good about AquaSeal is that it's flexible. So it'll bend with the wetsuit. You won't even know that it's there. And this one here has a fast dry agent on it. So in case you're going diving the next morning, you don't have to wait 24 hours for it to cure. With wetsuits, a lot of people don't hang them right. They'll take them, they might dry them, but then they wad the thing up, stuff it down in the bottom of the bag, and then they put the BCs, the regulators, the weight belts, everything on top of it, and it's not good for wetsuits. There's a couple products, there's a couple hangers made for wetsuits, which are basically a wide-shouldered hanger so you don't get the little indents at your shoulder. But if not, as long as you do kind of a waist, hang it about the waist and kind of fold it over, it'll hang good and it'll keep its form and won't get a wrinkle in it basically, which will make for a bad spot on your wetsuit. All right, so next for the dry suits. We only have a few people here that use dry suits, but they've kind of got a little resurgence since we're doing a lot more tech diving, especially tech diving in the wintertime. We get out there, we're getting temperatures at 60 degrees, and I'm kind of a sissy at about 80 degrees. So 60 degrees, it better be a dry suit going on me. Now, there you have to be a little more diligent about cleaning a dry suit because you can get a lot of actual body bacteria inside the dry suit. So when you clean them, you have to clean not only the outside, but you have to clean the inside very well. Fold them out, rinse them, dry them, hang them especially. These are very important on dry suits, that you hang them properly or fold them properly in order to keep from getting a kink and creating an area that's a weak spot that you're eventually going to get a leak in. Now, once again, fresh water is key. Same thing with the zip stick on the zippers, works fantastic on the dry suits. And then with seals, on your seals, you're better off to use kind of a talc powder or something that's not, you don't want any petroleum-based products on there. You know, some of the baby powders actually have some petroleum base to them, and it can affect your seals. And you want to make sure you keep them out of the heat, because you'll warp your seals, and the first time you go to put your hand through it, you're just going to burn the thing right out. But like I say, dry suits are really the smallest point that we're going to talk about here, and we're really just about done. We've kind of gone over it. We're going to start getting now into the BC. Let's do a little housekeeping here. Oh, we got Coco. Don't forget about Coco. $5 donation, and we got Coco
To the sea turtles.
to $5 donation to the sea turtles, available at every 4C. You'll see them around, carry them around. You know, wherever you do a photo, get Coco in there. Coco's going to go for a swim right now. All right. So now we're going to go into BCs. Everybody, when they talk about fixing their gear, they primarily think about regulators. What you need to know is that most dive accidents are caused by the BC. It's caused by a BC failure. And the BCs are really the least expensive of anything that you can fix, and it is the easiest to take care of also. You'll see that if you don't take care of your BC, or if you don't pay attention to, say, BC age, you get problems like this happening. This is a common problem where the plastics just start to deteriorate from UV damage, heat, age, you name it, and these pieces will just pull out and snap off. Now, these aren't a slow process. It goes from working perfect to you pull on it one time and this thing comes off and you're holding your inflator in your hand. So you want to be very diligent about how you treat your BC. You know, keeping up, everybody wants their BC to last for 100 years. It's not going to. I mean, I do have a picture of one that I'll show you later that I sold to a guy back in 1991. And it's in beautiful shape. He takes phenomenal care of his BC. Now, that problem that I showed you right there, it's nothing that you can detect, but you can start to get an idea if it might happen. You'll start to see an older BC where it'll start to yellow. And you'll see that it will look a little more brittle and kind of get the chalky tone to it. If you have that happening, I would really start to look at getting a new BC, because, I mean, you might think that you can handle that situation, but you don't know when that thing's going to pop off. You could already be in a stressful situation of maybe a high current or fighting a fish or doing something, and then you go to pull on that thing, and all of a sudden, I don't have any inflation. You know, you're sitting there holding an inflator in your hand. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you proper ways to clean your BC. I will guarantee you this might be 20% of the people who do this, and that's probably being generous. Our BC, like this is a standard BC here, and you go diving, you get done, and let's say you're on a dive boat and you get back to the dock. Everybody's like, well, how do I do my gear at that point in time? Because everybody's going to get back to the dock, and then they're probably going to go, like up near us, they're going to go to the brass ring. They're going to grab a burger, a couple beers. So a couple hours go by. Next thing you know, all that salt that you had on your gear, it's been sitting out in the sun, has hardened, and it becomes that much harder to get off. So when you get back to the dock Any type of a dunking that you can do at a boat dock will help. Any type of rinsing to get as much salt off as you can. Then when you get home, I would do a secondary rinsing. If you don't have the ability to do a proper rinsing at the dock that you're diving at, when you get home, you need to take that extra 20 minutes, maybe a half hour at most, and clean all of your gear and do it properly. Now, I don't have a hose here, but the proper way to do it is right here. What you do is you push down your deflator button. If you can take a hose and fill it this way, it'll fill up through here, and just put a little bit of water inside of your BC. And then what you're gonna do, sorry, Nicole, I'm gonna borrow your regulator. And I'm gonna borrow Nicole's regulator, which is actually in very good shape for once. And I was very proud of her because she finally listened, and I had no chance of using hers for the show tonight, showing how nasty it was. She did a good job. So now we put the water in, hook up your BC, fill it up. And once you fill it up with air, then you can take the BC and actually swish it around, get that water in. It'll get through, it'll get all the salt that might be in the bladder around the dumps, and it will get it all through. Now what you want to do, this BC has 3 separate dumps, or actually 4 dumps. You want to dump water out of every dump. So you want to pull on this, dump a little water here, pull on this one, dump a little water there. Then you want to flip it upside down, pull that one, and then you want to drain a good portion of it through the actual inflator itself. What that's going to do, it's going to rinse out your actual Schrader valve that you have in here, or your O-rings if you have kind of a standard tech inflator on it. But whatever you do, you want that water to go in and out of here to help flush your actual inflator out and flush around all these pads. Now, there are some people who say, well, I take this off and then I put water in that way. It really is not the proper way to do it. I mean, it works fine. And with a Sequest or an Aqualung BC, it's fine because it's a pretty locked in seal here. But in some of the BCs, this seal is kind of free floating. So they take this off, they're not paying attention. Next thing you know, that seal winds up on the ground. They hook it back up. They get on the dive boat the next time and they're like, oh, it's leaking at the shoulder. Well, it's because they lost their seal. So my recommendation is to not do that. I would actually just sit here and do what I said. Hold your deflator button down, get water in this way, fill it with air, swish it around, go through all the dumps. Do this 3-4 times at least, and you'll get all the salt out and as much salt from around all your dumps and around your inflator as possible. Now, another thing that I see some people do, Sandra Edwards, is that they leave their inflator hose hooked to their BC. What that does is you can, if you don't get every inch of salt around here, it will actually create a pit at the actual inflator nipple and at the regulator hose. And you're going to start affecting the seal that you're going to get on this. You're going to have bubbles pissing out of here, and it's just going to be an annoying dive. So always disconnect your BC from your regulator. Now, when you're done, you've done all that dumping, hang and dry your BC. And now this is a bladderless BC. For those of you diving, you know, some of the wings, some dive right wings and so forth, there you'll have a bladder on the inside. You have to be very careful about how you store it because you don't want to pinch the inner bladder and create a spot, a weak spot in your BC when you go to inflate it. Now, there's a couple ways that you can do it. What a lot of people do is they'll actually put just a couple puffs of air just to get the BC out a little bit and then hang it. Hanging the BC is the best way to store a BC, not shoving it in a bag. But if you do put it in a bag, try to fold it into a flat position and lay it down real nicely. If you do that, you're going to be fine. But as you put it in the bag, you run the risk of poking it with knives, spear tips, all the other stuff that you might have in that bag. And that's something that you really don't want to do. Now, there is some products. This one here is BC Cleaner. And any product you use that is a light soap type product is good to use. You don't want to use anything too harsh. because as I said, you have some silicone products. There might be some rubber products in some of the BCs. You want to use something that is just a fairly light detergent product. Now, if you do all this, the problem that we're talking about there, if it were going to happen, it's going to happen much later in the life of the BC. So if you, I guess the only other thing, zip stick on this too. Yeah, remember, we have zippers on the BC. So make sure you do the zip stick on the BCs also. Now, any questions on the BC? And when do we service? All right, this is the question. Now, some manufacturers have some different programs that they have parts replacement programs. So you want to follow on their actual schedule of how they have their service intervals. Most of them might be like with Aqualung. You have 1 year that's an inspection, 1 year that's a service. Some of them have parts for life. More in the older ones, a lot of companies have gotten away from that just because it was an expensive proposition for them. I recommend yearly servicing of your regulator for a active standard diver. If you don't dive that much, say you dove a couple times a year and you took good care of your BC and your regulator, you can bring it in for an inspection each year, and we run it through and we'll check for all leaks, leaks at all the fittings. We'll check for intermediate pressures, any dry rotting going on, and it's just a good thing to do before you get into the diving season. Another thing is frequency of dives. There's some people who dive 300-400 dives a year. Those people are generally getting their gear serviced a couple times a year. Now, they're also one of the people who do the bad thing, which is not dry their gear. They say, well, I'm going to be in the water tomorrow, I'll leave it wet. It will eventually be the demise of your diving equipment if you keep doing that. So, any questions on BC? There's that BC, 1991, that I sold the guy that BC, and it is in pristine shape. And every time that it comes in, the guys at the counter call me, I don't know if we can service this. I go, no, unfortunately, his BC's in top condition. Now that off to the right is a valve core out of an oceanic BC inflator. That shows you what happens when you do not flush your regulator. And that's when I'm saying if you flush it and run it back through the actual inflator, pushing all the buttons. That's the main thing that you want to be doing, is pulling and pushing all of the buttons and anything that can move as you're running fresh water by it. And that just helps wash the salt by all the stuff. So if you're diving, get back to you're diving 300 dives a year, they give a 100 dive interval. If you take good care of it, you can run past that. Dive masters, most of the dive masters I know, or instructors I know, they're bringing it in just twice a year. It's probably 150 dives, 200 dives before I see any of their equipment.
So we have a question. They want to know an atomic BC or regulator. It says recommended 3-year service interval.
The atomic actually was a 2-year service interval, and that would fall more to the regulator side of things, or with the BC if they was dealing with the SS1. And part of the reason is that on where their second stage seats are, most people have a screw down, so it sits under 140 pounds of pressure, basically, if you want to give it to a number, where an atomic sits off. It actually has the air pressure, pushes it down and locks it in, and then when you're not using it, it stays off, so you don't get an indentation on there. You're not wearing on the seat near as much as if it was constantly locked down on. That's just it. Like I say, each manufacturer is different on their recommendations on when they expect to get it serviced. Atomic has never had a parts replacement program for that reason. They say instead of getting it repaired each year, you can go 2 years because we're not indenting the seat as your regulator is sitting still.
Okay. They want to know if they can manually inflate the BCD instead of using the hookup.
You can manually inflate it. That's fine, and you don't have to fill it all the way. You just want to get enough air in there to expand the bladder, so when you roll it around, the water gets into all the areas and gets out all the dumps. And so you don't have to fill it till it pops out of air.
How do you actually apply the zipper stick on BC?
The zip stick is it's like a chapstick. You literally pull the cap off, and you just run it right down the zip line, and then run your zipper back and forth a few times. It's just like using a tube of chapstick.
Oh.
All right. Now we get to the fun stuff. Now, the funny part about this is, I mean, I literally get bribes or I get messages for people that tell me, do not use my gear in your seminar. I know it's bad, but please don't use it. So, I get people bringing me lemon squares. I get people, I get an occasional bottle of whiskey. I just get a please, please, please. And so I'm not going to call out too many names. Generally, I would have called out Nicole, but unfortunately, she's been taking very good care of her regulator. So I'm kind of a little PO'd at her because it's more fun to embarrass her when she's right here. So let's get to regulators. Now, the one thing about regulators, fresh water. Please, fresh water. Now, most people are just used to taking a regulator, dunking it in the water. We have dust caps on there, which will keep most of the water out, but it does not keep all of the water out. Some of the regulators, such as the one that Nicole has, actually has an automatic closing device right here, so that you don't need it when the regulator's not in use. This basically seals off the first stage. Now, as long as you take care of your regulator, that will work fine. If you don't take care of your regulator, this will get covered in salt, and you'll go to dunk your regulator thinking it's working fine. Fresh water or mixture of fresh and salt water will get all through your first stage and down into your second stage. Now, what we're talking about when you're at a boat, if you're at the boat and you know you're not going to be home in a while, what you want to do is rinse off your regulator, put a dust cap on. She doesn't have one because she has this device. But if you put your dust cap on, take your second stages, run them through the water, run your first stage through the water, but you're better off if you can spray off your first stage if you're not going to have it under pressure. Under pressure is the proper way to be able to clean your regulator. So what you would want to do, and I advise everybody, it's just over $100, a pony bottle. Pony bottle has a couple of good benefits. One is when you go to clean your gear, you just hook it up, pressurize your regulator. You take your second stages, put them underwater. You kind of hold over the mouth, create a mess. You sit there, you purge. And what this does is it allows water to get in, flow out. You're purging it back out. Because if you're just dunking it in water, all that salt will still sit back in these little corners where all these O-rings are. And this will allow you to get it out, put it over. All right, so you do that with both of these regulators, especially this one. And what they'll do is, there we go. So we've purged both of these regulators, gotten water in, flushed it out, got water in, flushed it out. You're getting as much salt as you can. Now, if you have an adjustment knob, when you're underwater, do the same thing. Take your knob in and out. Take it in and out like that. And what that does is any salt that's around the threads of your adjustment knob helps get that off of there, because these are generally metal on metal. Half the time I'm having to take a pair of pliers and get on here to break these things free. And this area right here, this joint, is a frequent problem. There's an O-ring inside of this fitting. Salt will get on this back side and get up against that O-ring, and it'll eventually start just chewing that O-ring up. And then you'll start getting a leak out of your hose, just bubbling out of this hose. So you want to be able to get it down there. Same thing, just twist the second stages around, and that just helps clear that out and get as much salt out as possible. Now, the benefit of having a pressurized system is that you can just take the whole thing, dunk it underwater at this point in time. Okay, everything's cool. No water is going to get into your regulator at this point. It can't happen. Now, if you didn't have it pressurized and you put it underwater like this, even if your first stage is sealed, so no water is getting in your first stage, if your second stage bumps, it opens up the pathway because you have no pressure going this way. Water will backflow in through the hoses into the first stage. You might not even know it. You'll go to hook it up next time and you'll feel a bunch of water coming out. And it's probably because you had water inside of your first stage and inside your hoses that's now being pushed out. Now, which brings us to our next point. If you ever get water inside of your regulator, be it if you drop it in salt water, if you put it in and you didn't have the dust cap on, the best thing to do is get it into fresh water, let it flood in fresh water, hook it to a tank, blow it out. And what that would do, especially if you got salt water in there, it'll help push the salt water out of the first stage. You're better off to replace it with fresh water than salt water. And as you purge your regulator, you're going to blow all that water out of there eventually. It'll take, 1,000 pounds of pressure, but you'll get it out of there. So if you did what we're talking about, you did your second stages, you put your first stage in, and you just let it sit in there for a little bit. I've got to tell you about this one. You have two O-rings on a swivel on your pressure gauge or your computer. Same thing. Put them in there, just turn it around, try to flush some of that water out of there. They're two little bitty O-rings that we probably have more people coming in. I got a leak in my regulator. That's where it is. Nobody ever rinses this. Now, once you do this, you take it back out. Same thing as before. Make sure everything's dry. Clean that out. Then you're gonna purge your regulator. We'll kind of try to show you here. When you first start purging it, it's gonna be blasting in the water. Just do that until you don't get any mist coming out. And what that would do is get the bulk of the water out. And then from here, you're gonna let it air dry, either hang it, put it out. Some people will set it out in the sun for just a little bit to help it dry, and then put it away, store it however you want to. Now, once again, the best way, if you have the ability, is if you can hang your equipment. And they do make hangers that you strap your BC around, it has a place to hook on your regulator. You can hang the hoses nice and gently on top of the edges of the hanger. The more advanced ones have places for your gloves, your boots, your mask. And it's probably, I think they're a $10 or $12 item, worth every penny if you have the space to do it, versus shoving it inside of a bag and dumping everything in there. Now, I have a lot of sets of gear. I got one that I take care of. The other ones, it's a do as I say, not as I do type of thing. And I know it when I go to grab them out. I'm like, I'm my own worst enemy sometimes. And if I'm not, the tall guy over there, who my son is. So, question.
Why warm water versus cold water?
Warm water just helps break down salt. You don't want to use hot. Hot can cause more problems than you want. But just a little warm water, when you let it set in there, will help dissolve the salt a little easier.
How long or how many times should you rinse the regulators this way?
You rinse the regulator this way. If you do it properly, one time rinsing it each time you go diving. One time rinsing it, though, will be plenty. Because you're going to purge it, 4 or 5 times in the water each second stage. And then if you have it with a tank, dunk it in. Now, if you don't have a tank to do this, then what you're going to do is you're going to do the same thing, but you're just going to be taking it and swishing it around. But don't put the whole regulator under. Just take it, swish it around, do that, let it drip, swish it around, let it drip. It will work very well doing that way, just not as good as if you have it under pressure. The problem comes is on your first stage. Your first stage is where you can have issues, and that's where, like I say, hers has the ACD system, so you can do that and let it drip like that, do that, let it drip like that, and that's fine. If not, make sure that you have a sealing dust cover on here. I have a real hard time trusting a bunch of dust covers on here. You're better off sometimes just to spray around and do it as good as you can. You can dump your first stage in like this without hitting the area, the air inlet, and rinse it off that way, and it will work extremely well, because here's the biggest failure point of a regulator is all your hoses. Now, she only has one hose protector here. What happens, some of these hose protectors do not drain real well, so it'll get salt under there and it'll stay under there. You want to pull these back every so often. Get a can of silicone spray, just hit it, silicone spray on each of these sections here. You can put your hose protectors back up. What happens if you don't, salt will get underneath these fittings right here, and it'll actually build up underneath and break apart where the rubber booting is. And actually, when you clean it and the salt dissolves, then it's opened up the space here, and that rubber boot will create the failure point for your hose. So hose protectors are great to keep your hose from bending too much, but they can be the demise if you don't clean underneath them. So just pull them back every so often, clean them, and put them back. Did a very good job so far.
I get 4 stars.
Okay, so another question is, will holding the second stage lower help the water get out of the hoses better?
Holding the second stage lower. Well, hopefully there's not going to be any water in your hoses. That's the goal, is to keep water. You want water only to this point right here, which is where your seat would be on each of these second stages. We're trying to keep water out of the hoses is the whole problem. Now, if you do get water in the hoses, yes, drop the regulator down this way, purge it, and get everything to flow down. You know, let gravity be the friend. Let gravity be the friend. Okay, now, let's see, we got the fresh water. Did I tell you guys about fresh water? Because you always want to use fresh water. Okay, now leak points on a regulator. That's probably the next biggest problem that we get that really shouldn't be a problem. There are areas that are very easy leak points to deal with. The biggest one is the mouthpiece that we talked about earlier. If you're getting water in to your regulator as you're diving, more than likely you have a hole or some type of breach at your mouthpiece, and it could be a pinhole, but it's enough that when you're sucking on it to get the air, it's pulling in water. Beyond that, it's getting into where the diaphragms are. This is your exhaust diaphragm here. If you do not clean your regulator properly, what will happen is underneath here, around the sealing edge right here, the salt will build up. And then what will happen is when it breaks free, it won't sit back completely perfect. And then water will just kind of fizzle right by it and give you a little area there for water to sneak in. That's the reason this is very important that you get under there. You don't have to pull this off and clean it this way. The swishing and the purging will help blow it out past that, the exhaust diaphragm. There is a purge diaphragm under here. Really shouldn't be an issue at all, because some regulators it's easier to get to and poke into if you have something that gets in there and creates a hole. The ones nowadays are all made out of silicone. They're very durable. As long as you're halfway good about your regulator, it's probably not going to be the issue. More than likely, it's going to be one of these 2 points here that will cause a leaking issue. If not, then we go to this as your next step. All right. So where are we at now? All right. So then everybody in the world's gone into, I mean, nitrox is pretty much the way to go, especially around here in South Florida. We're in the ultimate nitrox diving area with our depths that we dive. our ease of getting out there. We can run extended dive trips and still be back at the dock within 4 hours doing 2 trips. I mean, it's really is a huge benefit to be diving nitrox. Nitrox, there's been a standard up to 40%. You don't need to be O2 compatible. I kind of fall in the little more of the anything that you have an increased O2, I want O2 compatible. Every repair that we do makes it as O2 compatible as possible without going into a full O2 scrub. Every part we use is Vitime. Every grease that we use is a Tribal Lube or Crystal Lube type grease. We make it so that it is as close to O2 clean as you can get. Now, O2 cleaning, if you have an O2 clean regulator, and somehow, and I haven't figured out how, generally the O2 clean regulators are the worst regulators I get. And I think it's because they're generally on some type of a backup bottle that people aren't thinking about. They might not use them every dive. They might not think about it because a lot of times the O2 regulators aren't the very expensive regulators either. They're a very easy, durable, bulletproof regulator because you're not breathing on it. Generally you're breathing on it, in the 20 to 40 foot range. So it doesn't need to be a high performer, and they just forget about it. And I'll get them in just complete states of, well, I'll show you one right here. Let me show you. And yes, guys, this is an O2 rig that I can't even get apart now, but this is an O2 regulator, okay? This is how it came to me, and that's not how it's supposed to look. Now, what he does is he takes his O2 regulator and it sits inside, wrapped around his pony tank, and his pony tank looks just like this too. And I really don't think he's ever laid a piece of fresh water on here. I can't tell you how the inside looks yet because I haven't gotten the part yet. I actually came down here to get, because I snapped my wrench off earlier. So I came down here to get another wrench to try to get this one open. Now, you do not want it to look like this. Here's another one that came in today. Now, this is how it should look. This is pre-cleaning. So this is how the guy's regulator comes into me. Now, I will tell you this guy is probably one of the best guys at keeping his gear clean that I've ever seen. But this is how a regulator should look. This is the regulator that he uses on one of his stage bottles. He's not using it on his pure O2, but he's using it on a high oxygen mix. So what you need to do is be extra careful with any O2, especially any high percentage O2 regulator. You need to go that next step. You need to have a separate bin, or at least changing the water, doing everything you can to keep it as O2 compatible as possible. All right, now as far as storing your regulators, we kind of touched on it. Obviously, the best way is if you can hang it on the hangers. The one thing that you must do, though, you must dry your second stages. That's where purging them out helps to dry them. Just letting them sit, water is going to stay, in all the little crevices, and you're eventually going to wind up with this bacteria. And I have a couple pictures. I don't have my good picture. I couldn't find the real good one that looked like somebody had lost a bag of Cheetos inside of it, but I found a couple pictures in there. You would be amazed at how many regulators I get that are almost completely flooded from salt water. They're saying, well, it's impossible. I couldn't have got salt water in there because all I did is I went diving with my tank and everything was fine. Well, there's a couple things that happen. One of the things is when you go to hook up your regulator, the most important thing that nobody ever does is before you hook up your regulator, purge your tank a couple times. A little bit of water might mist off of here, especially you get when it's a little sporty out. We've got salt spray coming, landing in here. If you have a den valve, it's even that much more relevant because you have a much bigger area for water to collect into. If you don't do that, you hook your regulator up, you have salt water sitting on the valve, you turn the valve on, you're blasting 3,000 PSI worth of salt water throughout your regulator. So you do that a couple hundred times before it gets to me. That's the reason the regulators look like a couple of the pictures that you'll see here in a minute. I think
really quick, we got a question. For people that are dive professionals, like this guy JP wrote, they don't have time to clean it every day. Is it okay if you do it once or twice a month?
Yeah. All right, my buddy JP. All right, so JP's. We're not going to go into JP's regulators. I don't have the therapist here to help me with that one.
Yes,
But,
you do. It's right there.
Yeah. So we actually had. I was going to show you guys. I mean, the average regulator can be taken apart and put back together with this handful of tools. If your regulator's in good shape, I could take that whole regulator apart with this handful of tools. Now, JP's regulator, I mean, I've got sawzalls, torches, whiskey, hammers. I mean, that's what's needed to take apart JP's regulator. But the answer is your regulator should be treated like this every day you dive. JP might dive, 25 days in a row. Each day you dive, go through this process, dry it as good as possible. If not, you're going to build this bacteria in your second stage it's disgusting. It really is. And it's disgusting for me to have to work on them that way. And when I show people, they're like, that it doesn't come back to me a second time like that. I'll tell you that. This is where the stearamine will help also. As a stearamine rinse, it will help kill that bacteria that you have in the second stages. And I've got it right here. So this will help kill that bacteria in the second stages, and you won't get it's called lung butter. All right, you don't get the lung butter inside your second stage. Do you have the picture of that?
Oh yeah. Let's see the pictures.
She's gonna pull up. Okay, so this is actually a first stage of a guy who does dive regularly. Swears that he takes great care of his regulator. This is the inlet part of the first stage right here, and this is actually right there. This is off the same type of regulator. And it's supposed to look nice and shiny like this. He's got some beautiful colors in there. I will admit I like the turquoise inside there, but turquoise is not supposed to be inside your regulator. Now, we actually got this regulator very clean. I don't think I had the picture. Now, I do have a picture of the next step of this one. Nope, that's the Ziegel one. There. So this regulator here, this is on piston regulator. That's the inside of his regulator on the left. And there is no way that an O-ring can seal against that. And that's what happened. It chewed his O-ring completely apart and bubbles were going everywhere. One on the right is how it looked after we got done cleaning it. Had to do a little 2000 grit sandpaper to take a couple rough edges off, but it turned out great. But I'm sure there was 17 or 35 curse words that came out of my mouth during this regulator. But trying to break it apart, that's where a lot of the damage can happen, is trying to get it apart from that state of just complete fusion from salt and corrosion. Now this one is a diaphragm regulator. Diaphragm regulator is supposed to be completely sealed. This actually had an environmental seal kit on it. Yet you see the amount of salt and corrosion that was throughout this regulator, throughout the inside of the hoses. It was everywhere. And he dove with this regulator daily. And same excuse. Oh, I'm diving all the time. I don't have time to clean it. Well, you need to have time to clean it. It's going to start to fail. And he actually, the first stage on this thing, he had to replace it. And it's an expensive venture. And this is, you guys spend a lot of money on gear. This is to keep it so that gear is going to last as long as you want it to. I'm going to make it. You bring it to me. I'm going to make it look. It's going to be as brand new as I can make it. But I need your help a little bit on that stage, because you don't want to lose the chrome on your regulator. When you lose the chrome, you've changed the tolerance of the sealing surfaces, and you don't want to do that. You're eventually going to start wearing on O-rings and causing problems and leaks and pressure changes. Now you got that. There we go. So that picture there, okay, the one on the left is, it's actually a Poseidon second stage. One of the most important second stages not to treat like he did. They're very high performing, but very sensitive to any type of salt corrosion and bad treatment. He did a bad job. The one on the right, that's the lung butter we're talking about. Now that's all dried up. I get them sometimes where it's still festering bad, and it's really is nasty. There's sometimes I have to put them aside, almost hit them with pressure. Now, you don't want to be breathing that stuff in on a regular basis. And I probably get to that degree that is right there is probably 20-25% of the regulators I get in. I get another 10% that is 10 times worse than that. For the most part, people's regulators are good. They take a decent care job of them. It's more the people who dive that 100 dives a year, 200 dives a year, that we get that type of situation where they're not letting it dry. And that bacteria, you've got heat, you've got cool, you've got a dark space, you've got bacteria and moisture. I mean, you're just breeding stuff inside of there, and that's eventually getting inside your lungs, and you don't want it that way.
So comment and / question. On dive boats, people see that they're using the tank valve to blow the O-ring clean dry, but it's actually getting into the first stage. Is that something they should avoid?
That's that real touchy subject. So blowing it dry is fine. Like especially on a regulator like this, you can take this one and blow it dry. There's no issue. Now on this guy here, if you were going to blow it dry and you wanted to be extra careful, what you would do is you would literally put your finger over the top, then hit it, and then inside of your dust cap. That way you keep any of the salt or any of the water outside of your first stage. There should not have been any water that had gotten into this area here. It should all been around and in here. So the more that you can keep out of here, the better. And how you know if you're not doing it right, around the edge of this filter, you'll start to see little green spots and green dots and different colors that aren't this nice shiny metal material. You start to see that, you're doing something just a little bit wrong. It might not be horrible. A couple dots sometimes, you almost can't help. But if you start to see your filter turning green, you're doing something very wrong. So that's what we're trying to prevent. And I have filters before that were just plain flat filters that had actually caved in because they were so corroded with salt that they wouldn't allow air through. So when you turn the tank on, it would literally fold and bust the filter. So it is an important thing to keep clean.
Besides fresh warm water, and stearamine, what other agents can you use to rinse with? Some people are asking, can you use vinegar or simple green?
Vinegar is basically kind of what I use. I have a product that I get from a company. It's god awful expensive vinegar, and it's about 4 or 5 times the potency of vinegar. But you try not to use that if you don't have to. In an emergency for fine cleanings, yes. In a daily cleaning, I wouldn't use vinegar. You can use some light soaps and any type of agents like that. You just like with the BC, you never want to use anything that is too strong. Even a diluted down simple green is fine. Just leave you don't want to leave the simple green flavor in your mouthpiece. So, but just keep them diluted well and rinse them well. It's all how you rinse it afterwards that's going to make the difference. Any of the stuff that you would use is just helping break down the salt. If you break down the salt and get the salt off of here, then you have no issues. The chrome on most of the regulators that we have, 90% of our regulators are chrome. That chrome is a great agent for helping to keep protection from the salt, unless you let the salt sit on it in an area that will start to chip at it. And once you lose your chrome, you're down to brass. Once you're on the brass, it's just a corrosion factory. Now, if you have titanium, you don't have that issue, but you still have to clean your regulator. Because even on titanium regulators, not every part on the regulator is titanium. So You have a couple parts that you'll get some dissimilar metal actions happening. Your springs are still not, they're not made of titanium, and you can get some rusting and some corrosion happening there. So everything that you just want to, warm water is the best. Maybe every once in a while, hit it with a little soap. You don't have to do soap every time, unless you're just diligent about how you rinse it afterwards. Anything? All right. Now, just real quick, you don't have to go back. I just wanted to show you guys the reason that we do this. This is the parts that are involved for just a first and second stage, okay? There's that many parts in a first and second stage. Not all of them, but this is a very, very common first and second stage kit. And so you have a lot of failure points if you do not treat it right. And you know, it's when I give you, when you get we're done with the servicing, all these rings and everything, unless you had a very good regulator, they're all discolored. They're all crusted with salt. I mean, it's hard to get into all these places. And I can generally tell when somebody at least gave it a very good effort. There's some places, you know, on the threads inside here that it's very hard to get into, but the more you do, the better it is. If it's not completely locked up, then I know you at least gave it a shot. All right, now the tanks. Almost nobody thinks about tanks when they think about rinsing. This is one area, if you have I told you about getting the pony bottle. Pony bottle acts because it's just nice, light, and easy. You can put it into your sink at the house. It also acts as a redundant supply of air for the people who are a little more safety conscious when they're out there diving. But say you have your regular tanks and you have a large trash bin that you can dedicate to this. So I guess it wouldn't be a trash bin, it'd be a rinse bin at this point. You can actually take your whole tank, hook your regulator up, dump the whole thing in, because you want to clean your valve. The valves are just a bunch of metal and O-ring parts. And if you do not clean your valve, those areas are going to start chewing up O-rings. You're going to start getting leaks. You're going to start stripping valves because things aren't moving correctly or the seats aren't going to seat correctly. And to overhaul a valve, it is almost more worth it just to buy a new valve. By the time that you replace the parts internally in the valve and pay somebody to do it and clean it up, and you still probably had all the chrome gone it, you're just sitting with brass that's going to corrode even quicker. It's generally easier just to buy a valve. So please rinse your valves. Even if you just take the hose, spray them down, move them around a little bit, and that's all you got to do. Rinse your tank down, especially if you got down by a boot. Some of the boots, depending on the style of boot and the style of tank you have, can hold water that will eventually eat into the paint and eat into your tank. And it doesn't take a big pit in order to get a failure on a tank. So, people kind of get shocked when we tell them, no, this tank doesn't work because you got, pits here, here, and here that they didn't see. The rest of the tank looks great, and we popped off the boot, and they've just got pitting underneath the whole boot. So you just want to be very good about how you clean your tank also. Make sure as few stickers as you put on, the better. Visual stickers get pulled off every year, cleaned underneath. People who have stickers that have been on there for 20 years, because they went diving in Wakatobi, and they come back and that sticker's been on there, and they get mad if we scrape it off, which is really what we should be doing at each visual. But if they get mad and all that salt keeps building underneath that sticker, it'll eventually ruin your tank. And if it's an aluminum tank, you're knocking on the door of a couple $100. You got a steel tank on there, you're at $400. And this is some potentially expensive gear that you can get that you want to take care of, and it's simple stuff to take care of. Fresh water will do it. And as far as visuals and hydros, just make sure before you go diving. I mean, this is our worst part of our year of surprises. Everyone comes in, they haven't dove since End of July last year, they go in the garage, they pick up the tanks, they come into us. All right, I need to get these filled. And they look and we're like, oh, you're out of hydro. Every 5 years, this guy here, it's my tank, needs to be hydroed in October. So keep an eye on your dates. Every 5 years on your hydro, every year on your visual. And, you know, if you get a chance, you're best to get out of the cycle of this time of year on your dates. You know, push it to a less busy time of year. Hydros take a week to get back. They leave on, you know, most of them leave on Tuesday, get back the following Tuesday. Visuals we can get done in the day. But it's not why you're there. It's hard for us to do when we have 50 guys coming in with visuals to get everybody's visual done for them. So you might have to come back to get it done. All right, now, then it comes down to the tank valve or the tanks and how you store them, how you, in a truck, we have a thing called truck valve. That's because everybody with a pickup truck, including myself, takes them, we throw our tanks in the back of the truck. I actually strap mine down. Some people just put them in the back of the truck, and as they're slamming on the brakes and hitting the gas, the tanks are just going back and forth and slamming into stuff. What will happen is at the very top of your valve will just get pushed down just a little bit. Not as bad for a standard K valve. When you go to a DIN valve, just that little bit of a ding makes it so you can't thread your DIN fitting in there, and then you're talking an expensive valve to replace. So what you want to do is either get some type of a carrying system. We have plenty of different tank racks. There's probably 50 different ways that you can put your tanks in and keep them secure. You always want them secure. If it's your own boat, you want them secure. They make, you know, some different tank racks and tank tamers that you can put in to snap your tanks in to keep them from rolling around and getting beat up. And, you know, you got to watch out with your handle, because if you bang something on your handle, you're going to snap the stem off, have an issue that way. You also don't want to store tanks, especially if you have a dark colored tank. You know, if you got a high pressure tank and then you got a dark tank, and then you put it in the back of a truck, and it's in, you know, I think we're a heat index of 105 today, if I remember right. And it sits out there and it's full, it's only going to get more full. And, you know, if it's an older, you know, say a couple year valve, and your burst disc has a bunch of salt around there because you hadn't been rinsing your valve well, then you get a big boom. And then that tank goes around and causes all kinds of havoc. So, you know, try to keep it, just like everything else, keep it out of the heat, keep it rinsed with fresh water. Just, you know, be generally careful in how you do your dive gear. Well, holding the valve, I kind of went into that. See what you want to do when you grab your tank. Okay, you got your valve here. You don't want to grab by that thing. Okay, it kind of has a natural good way to grab a tank for most people, which is by the big thick metal parts here. You can sit there and grab it. Most people grab it and get a second hand under it and go that way. We got a couple guys who are tough guys who can grab a tank here and grab a second one here and carry two at one time in hand like that. It's not good. All that pressure right here is sitting on this one stem, and that stem will eventually get bent, and then the O-ring that's in there will start to get compromised, and you'll start having leaks out of your valve. All right, so with the rest of your gear, if you get newer gear, you know, we have serial numbers. We actually input serial numbers in our computer now. So we keep record of that, but you should keep record also. Any paperwork we give you, you should have a folder or a bag. Generally, the easiest thing is a Ziploc bag even. So all the stuff's in one thing. And you just walk in, if it's time for a service, you walk in, you throw the bag at me, and I'll pick the paperwork I need. Everything's taken care of. And there are a couple companies, Dan and Dive Assured, which do have equipment replacement. So say that you are a traveler, or say that you do a lot of trips where you have your gear. If you have any type of an accident that's a non-diving accident, let's just say that your gear gets lost, in travel, there is coverage for it to replace it. And different levels of coverage depending on the company and which plan that you get. So besides the actual safety factor of having either of these companies for a personal safety factor, there are also gear sections on it. And with the serial number part, we were going at that on, people get confused on the difference between a warranty and a service agreement. Every product that comes out in the diving world has a warranty. Some might be a year warranty. The average is a 2-year warranty. Some even have lifetime warranties depending on the product. That is a warranty for an actual failure, a manufacturer defect. Treated completely different than on the service side of things. That has to do with an actual failure of a part of your regulator. A service agreement is one where, like these kits here, if you have a service agreement and it's time for you to get your regulator service and you're under that agreement and you're within the timelines, these parts here are covered for you. You pay the labor, they pay the parts. And these 2 parts kits here, we're 39 here and we're 17 here. So that's just on these 2. We haven't even gotten into an octo yet. So it is worth it. And like I say, at this point, every O-ring, every seat gets replaced when you do this. And your regulator will stay looking as new, as long as you keep doing that. And as long as you keep the salt off of there and keep the chrome nice and fresh. That BC that I showed you, he also has an old con shelf regulator that is pristine. And I can't talk him out of it. So I got to keep sitting there day in, day out, cleaning his regulator. All right. Now, I know we kind of went over a lot of stuff, half quick, but any questions from anybody?
Questions about the service. What is the turnaround time currently versus if I get it done during other parts of the year?
All right. Well, currently adds another factor of fun in with the situation that we're in. A lot of most of our suppliers are from out on the West Coast, California, Washington type stuff. They're still in semi-lockdown if they're even open. Parts have been a nightmare to get. We get them in, 100 at a clip, and that just pushes right out the door. We try to stay at a 7-day time frame. Keep it at a 7 business day time frame, and that's our goal. Sometimes if parts aren't available, it pushes it off, but it's on them on when we can get a part. We work well with a bunch of other shops in the area, and they work well with us. And a lot of times we'll swap parts if need be to get everybody out and keep them diving. So I'm going to say 7 days. We're right into the crux of mini season. It's, if it ever got pushed to 10 days, I stress out. But for the average everyday person coming in, we're right at 7 days. I know at the Riviera store, when I left there this afternoon, I was on stuff that came in on July 2nd. So we're right at that 7-day mark, but we're there 7 days a week, getting it done. And each manufacturer is different. And as your regulators get older, some of those regulators they'll stop supporting them. They might have parts for a couple of years, and we might have parts, and we might have, kits that can be used, but you might not be able to get purge covers or some other bodies for the regulators. At that point is when you got to look at doing some type of a trade-in program or just replacing, outright.
And go ahead, can you talk a little bit about the trade-in, trade-up that we have here at 4C?
Yeah, we do basically a program, just like if you're going to bring in a first and second stage, you can trade it in on the first and second stage, get it in and get a discount off of it, and it's a 20% discount that you'll get off of the product. A direct first and second stage for a first and second stage, a computer console for a computer console, a octo for an octo. So it's apples for apples type trade-in program, but it allows you to get something back. We're buying your old stuff for the 20% and getting you into something new. And it benefits. definitely, it benefits everybody. You know, it gets you into some new stuff. Generally, the stuff that's being brought in is stuff that has just hit the point that we're almost using duct tape on it. So, you know, you definitely get a benefit rather than just throwing it away, that there is an actual monetary value for you.
We didn't touch on watches and computers. Just really quick, what's a good rinse steps that you have for those?
Rinse steps on the watches and computers are exactly like everything else. What you want to do is just take them, get them underwater, manipulate every button that they have. If it's a watch, you might have, like, say it was my watch, I would get it under there. You push all the buttons underwater to help wash the salt away. So you know, everybody worries just about the battery door and the battery as a leak point. That's going to be the least problematic leak point that you have on a watch. Each of these buttons, all it's doing is either going through one or two O-rings, depending on which computer that you have. So if you go diving, you're in the salt, you come out, all that area inside of here has just created just like a salt barrier. So then all you're doing is you're pushing the button through salt onto the O-ring. You're eventually going to compromise that O-ring. So you definitely want to rinse your watch, rinse your computer, same way, just push the buttons on the computer like you would, you know, any part of your regulator.
Awesome. Okay, guys, thank you for all your questions. Billy, that was a great presentation. Who wants to win a free service of either your regulator or BC? So I'm going to put this random name picker up. All right, so this is how it works, guys. Hold on. Just trying to figure out how this all works. Okay, so I've inputted everybody's name into our random name picker. So there's everyone that registered, okay? And I'm gonna hit this green button, and of course my little cursor guy is not showing up. Where is my cursor? Really?
I thought you were the tech person.
There it is, okay. All right, so if I hit this green button, we're gonna see who is our winner. Da-da-da-da-da! And the winner is Anthony Peroni. Anthony, if you're watching, give us a thumbs up or a happy face because you're excited. You are our winner for our free either regulator service or BCD. So make sure, we'll email you and let you know, but make sure you get your gear in. We'll get it serviced for you. Woohoo! Good job.
And anytime you have a question on your gear, how it's working, how to service it, how to maintain it, feel free to call. You can call us, anybody down here at the Pompano store, 954-943-3483. Boca stores 561-368-0555. I'm generally up at the Riviera store, 561-845-2333. And when you call up there, you're going to ask if I'm there. And they're going to go, I don't know. And say, he's probably there. So go ahead and just tell them to pat you back, and we'll answer any question that you have. I mean, there's a lot of information here. It's actually very simple. I mean, it's just fresh water, rinse it, and dry it. So that's the crux of everything. You do that, you're going to hit 80% of how you take care of your gear. All right.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. And if you missed parts of it, don't worry. We're going to repost it onto our YouTube channel, or you can watch it on our timeline on our Facebook page. So, all right, everybody, let's grab our gear and go diving.
All right, guys.
See ya.